It's time to huddle up. I'm Garrett C. Wright. This is the Daily Huddle for Monday, September 11th. Thanks for making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. We certainly appreciate it. If you are watching on YouTube, hit that red subscribe button. Give the video a thumbs up. It helps us get in front of more college football fans. If you are listening on the podcast, drop a 5-star review. It goes a super long way in getting us in front of more college football fans in the audio space, and that's always a good thing. I got a question, and I don't know what the answer is, and I don't know when we'll get the answer to it. I guess I got an idea of when we'll get an answer to it. Is the Nick Saban era at Alabama almost over? Because it's increasingly feeling that way. It feels more and more every day like the Nick Saban era is reaching its conclusion. And there are a couple of things that lead me to wonder that question. The first one is the biggest one. It seems the most unlikely pairing. And I don't think Nick Saban has ever been a guy who's been strictly about money, who's been, I think he's taken jobs that have been lucrative, but they've been jobs that made a lot of sense for him to take. And jobs that ended up being pretty good fits outside of the Miami Dolphins, which if they had just signed Drew Brees, probably would have been a better fit. But that's another discussion for another day, maybe a What If Wednesday coming up. But Nick Saban's never been about the money. He's never been about the, pounding the table, at least not publicly. Maybe behind the scenes, he's Scrooge McDuck and a tyrant. I don't know. But his public persona has never been about money. It just hasn't. And yet, either he made a decision strictly for money, or I don't know what the other alternative is, because the pairing of Nick Saban with Pat McAfee is about as odd of a combo as you can imagine. I don't think there's really anything about Pat McAfee that shouts that guy would be a guy that Nick Saban would flock to. And yet, this went down on the Pat McAfee show last week.
Every single Thursday, we will be getting the incredible opportunity of chatting with head coach of Alabama, Nick Saban.
It's an honor and privilege for me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Coach.
We're
going to have a hell of a season. We are very, very grateful for your presence today and throughout this entire season. We are going to ask you the dumbest things you've ever heard in your entire life. We hope to not ruin you and your brand, but what we think is going to happen is a nice exploration of the brain of the greatest college football coach of all time. We appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, head coach Nick Saban.
So that happened last week. That Nick Saban is going to join the Pat McAfee show every Thursday during the college football season. How? Why? Not only that, I'll play this again real quick. I want you to hear what Nick Saban's reaction is when Pat makes that announcement.
Every single Thursday, we will be getting the incredible opportunity of chatting with head coach of Alabama, Nick Saban.
Honor and privilege for me. I appreciate the opportunity.
It's an honor and a privilege for me, and I appreciate the opportunity. What in the world happened to Nick Saban that appearing weekly on the Pat McAfee show would be an honor and a privilege? That does not make any sense. What we have known, what we've grown to know about Nick Saban is that Pat McAfee would be pretty far down on the list of folks that he would be like, hell yeah, this is awesome. Let's do that. That is not Nick Saban. And yet, I don't think he's BSing there. I don't think that he is looking at this as if like, okay, well, you're going to pay me to do this. All right, that's fine, whatever. I don't get that impersonation. I don't get that impression from him. It looks as if he's like, yeah, this will be fun. So how did Nick Saban get to be a guy who's worried about having fun? I don't know how logical the answers are, but there aren't many of them. There aren't many answers that make you go, okay, you know what? This offseason, Nick really lightened up, or what? Like, because all of those roads lead back to this is it. This is the end. Not only that, but the play on the field, too. Alabama knew that they had a problem at the quarterback spot, and they didn't really try all that hard to fix it this offseason. Supposedly, they made a somewhat run at Drake May, who I guess didn't want to win a Heisman Trophy or compete for national championships, but again, a topic for a different show. But they didn't hit the portal all that hard. They didn't try to entice anybody outside of Drake May, reportedly. There were some quarterbacks that could have been had. And they stuck with a guy in Jaden Milroe that they're like, it's okay. We'll figure it out. He hired an offensive coordinator that made Alabama fans and probably himself go, as long as somebody's calling the plays, it'll be fine. You know, we've got something to hang our hat on if he was pretty good at Notre Dame. They didn't go find, the hot young up-and-comer or the reclamation project from a coach who was seeking a second chance or anything else. Didn't allow somebody to go to the Nick Saban School of Rehabilitation. They just hired a B-tier offensive coordinator from another Power 5 program. And that was it. So a newfound, I don't even know if it's a newfound sense of fun or joy or what the emotion is that he's like, it's an honor and a privilege to be on the Pat McAfee show. If I told you 2 years ago that Nick Saban would ever mutter the words, it's an honor and a privilege, and I'm looking forward to it, when Pat McAfee announced that he was going to be on the show every week, you'd look at me like I had 8 heads. Because it just doesn't make sense. It's not a marriage that's like, oh, you know what? Actually, and that tracks. Because it doesn't. So I don't know what happened outside of that. This is it. And by God, this guy's going to enjoy his last go round. Now, it didn't look like he was really enjoying what was going on in Tuscaloosa Saturday, and he shouldn't have. But at the same time, it was to be expected. That was not going to be the way Alabama is currently constructed. Isn't a team that allows Nick Saban to go out on top if those are the decisions that he'd like to do, if that's the decision he'd like to make. If he wants this to be the last ride. And part of me waffles on this. Part of me wonders if Nick Saban is I want a farewell retirement tour where other schools are going to give me a rocking chair and all that stuff. Or if he just wants to somewhat nonchalantly ride off into the sunset. Because every college football coach has an ego. It's true of everybody, even the ones that tell you they don't, and they don't read or listen to or hear any of the things that are said poorly about them. They all do. They all have an ego. They all listen. They all read. And it's part of why I appreciate Deion Sanders, where after the win last week, he's calling people out because they know, the reporters know that Deion Sanders reads that stuff. The reporters know that every college football coach reads that stuff, listens to the radio, listens to podcasts, watch TV. It's there. You can pretend it doesn't happen, but it does. And I don't think Nick Saban he's never struck me as somebody who is a complete egomaniac. He almost just struck me as if somebody who's somewhat introverted, who happened to end up being really good at his job and has to deal with and put up with all of the things that come with that territory more than I want the focus to be on me. So I think if I had to lean one way or the other, I would lean towards the current hypothesis that this is it. And that after the bowl game, Nick Saban's going to ride off into the sunset and it's going to launch one of the wildest coaching carousels that we've seen in a long time, because there are a lot of people who have a lot of thoughts on who should replace Nick Saban as Alabama's head coach, and I don't know that any of them are going to agree on what that answer is. Again, different topic for a different day. But at some point, he's going to call it quits. And at some point, it's going to be a interesting search to replace him. And frankly, I can't wait for that day. And frankly, I don't think it's that far away, because you couple that, the Nick Saban joining the Pat McAfee show every week, and it's likely I'm reading too much into this, but it's just such an odd pairing. You couple that with the offensive coordinator hire and their kind of lackadaisical approach to finding a new offensive coordinator with this video after they lost on Saturday. Take a look, listen to this.
I do think that there was a great atmosphere out there. You know, our fans did a tremendous job. We appreciate the support. It was fantastic. And, you know, it's a privilege to play in games like this. It's a privilege to play at the University of Alabama. It's a privilege to play where you have such great tradition, and it's a privilege to play where you have such great fan support. So we really appreciate it. Thank you.
What would make Nick Saban become so introspective so often? A change in perspective. What would change Nick Saban's perspective? A large career decision. That is the exact opposite of who we've known Nick Saban to be. This intense, hyper-focused guy, always worried about getting better, becoming championship level, being excellent, and how we can be the best. That was not the man in that video clip. That's not who that was. The guy in that video clip was a guy who was introspective, who, despite taking a bitter loss at home for the first time in 15 years in a non-conference game, 16 years in a non-conference game, was preoccupied with, this was really fun, and it's nice to be in games that are important and matter and blah, blah, blah. It's the exact opposite of who we know Nick Saban to be. And so I can't help but kick around the questions of, well, why would he act like that? Why would he have that thought process? Because things are different inside that dome. Well, why are things different inside that cranium? Because he knows something that we don't. And he just keeps tipping us off, I think. I think by Nick Saban's actions, at least over the last week, he's telling you without telling you, you better enjoy the ride in 2023. Because they always tell you, you don't want to be the guy who replaces you don't want to be the guy who follows the guy. And if that's true, then this might be it for Alabama for a hot second. Now, I don't think he's going to leave the cupboard bare by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm telling you that something is different with Nick Saban. I hope it's not, a medical situation or something like that. But something has caused Nick Saban to become introspective and retrospective, appreciative, because he's right. It is a privilege to play in games like that. It's just he's one of the last guys you would expect to be the one to say that, especially after a loss, especially after the loss that they took, where you can read into some of the way they played of like, this is going to be a long 2023 season if things don't get markedly better. So it's just, there's something up. And I don't want to sit here with my college football tinfoil hat on and take it any farther than that. I'm just telling you that the actions from Nick Saban continue to show that at best something is different. Something is up, and he knows something that you don't. I just happen to believe that that's something that he knows is that every time he gets on the chartered plane, he might be going, I'm not going to miss this, or I'm going to miss being on this plane with these guys, but I can't do this anymore. Or every walk to the stadium, every pregame meal. I just think he's tipping his hand, and I don't think he's going to be all that quiet about it. That I think if somebody were to ask him, like, Nick, what's your future look like? He might just flat out tell you. But I think he's kind of banking on the fact that nobody's going to ask that question. But something's different. I don't know what it is, but it's undeniable that there has been a shift in perspective, or at least I think perspective is the right word. There's a shift in something that makes you go, why is he thinking that way? And when you kick that around in your head long enough, there are logical conclusions that you get to. Yesterday, we talked about Mel Tucker and Michigan State. And after having some time to think about it, I might have been misguided in my slight praise for Michigan State. It seems as if there are only two options. Either Michigan State has known since last December that these accusations were levied against Mel Tucker, and they didn't do anything because they thought the public wouldn't find out, or they threw away Mel Tucker's due process. They didn't have a media reaction, for if the media found out, because they thought the media would never find out, or they threw away Mel Tucker's due process to an investigation because of the media reaction that they thought would never find out. Because I gave us a little bit of praise to Michigan State for, hey, this came out, and the podcast was up yesterday before Michigan State's 5 p.m. news conference where they said, hey, we're going to suspend Mel Tucker without pay, blah, blah, blah. And then they were like, well, we didn't know that there were sexual misconduct allegations. Well, wait a second. So you were made aware last December that Mel Tucker had acted inappropriately. And had either launched an investigation that had done such a poor job that through, 10 months, you hadn't ever figured out that the accusations were about sexual harassment and sexual misconduct. Or you got the accusation and were like, God, I hope nobody ever finds out about this, because that could be really bad. Because the school yesterday said, well, we didn't know there was anything like sexual that were part of the problem. And kudos to their, Title IX office and their, the folks who their job is to keep this stuff under wraps, because you didn't find out about it until the accuser wanted you to find out about it. Because if it had gotten out, I don't know that Mel Tucker coaches the first 2 games of the season. And then there are those questions of, well, wait a second. How does a guy under investigation for sexual harassment coach the first 2 games of the season? How does that happen? And I think those are fair questions. And I don't know that we're going to like the answers from Michigan State, because in reality, the answers are, well, it wouldn't have looked very good. You know what looks not good? Having it come out after the fact, after the season has already started. Because people pretty easily put 2 and 2 together and they go, well, wait a second, this came to you in December of 2022? And either you haven't put together an investigation to find out what actually happened. And truthfully, there might not be a way to put together an investigation to find out the real baseline facts to find out, because right now a he said, she said. It's not a great place to be for the school, but that's the reality of the situation. Either you haven't put together an investigation in 10 months to get enough answers for whether this guy should still be your football coach enough, or you did, and you just hope nobody would ever find out about it. Neither one of those options is great. Neither one of them is good. Neither one of them should instill any we've got confident people running this university. And it's also bad because it's a university that has had problems in this aspect in the past by a doctor and accusations against a past football coach and a current basketball coach. If people start to question whether anybody at your university has a spine, that is a bad place for your university to be. And it is all completely self-inflicted. And it happens seemingly once a year, sometimes more, where you just have to sit here and as an impartial, unbiased observer of college football, college athletics, where I have to sit here and think, how hard is it to do the right thing first? It's not difficult. It's not hard. People just think it's more difficult and then hope, God, I hope we do the wrong thing and nobody ever finds out that we did the wrong thing. They always find out. Damn near always they find out. And it looks that much worse when they do find out, because then they know that you had the opportunity to do the right thing and you didn't. So there are questions at Michigan State that need answered. And as I said yesterday, I don't know that the week closes with Mel Tucker still being the head coach at Michigan State. I don't know that there is another angle that it ends up any other way. The problem becomes if after 10 months you didn't reach a conclusion in an investigation, that investigation is either a sham or you didn't have any evidence that led you to believe that you needed to make a decision and make a change. But if by Friday Mel Tucker is no longer your head football coach, the question should be, why in the hell did it take 5 days, 4 days, 3 days, whatever the case may be, when you had 10 months? And why did that guy coach your first 2 games if he was under an investigation that you conducted, that you knew was the investigation? Because on the flip side of this, if Michigan State gets out in front of this and in mid-August says, we have allegations of misconduct by our head football coach, we are going to suspend him without pay right now until we get to the bottom of this. If there's nothing more than he said, she said evidence, and that's what we have right now publicly, is Mel Tucker says it was a consensual relationship. Brenda Tracy, the rape survivor who is now an advocate for educating young adults, young males, has no, it wasn't consensual. He acted horribly inappropriately, and I tried to stop it, and he wouldn't. If that's all there is, if you get out in front of it, you don't really have that big of a mess on your hands. Now you got a mess to clean up, and it's like the 5th mess at your school in 6 years. That's the problem. And I don't know that they know that. We'll see where it goes from here. That'll do it for today's edition of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. Again, if you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up. If you're watching or if you're listening on the podcast, give us a 5-star review. It helps us get in front of more college football fans, and that's always a really good thing. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Daily Huddle on Saturday Glory. Thanks for making us a part of your day. We'll see you.